If you're traveling westwards from Melbourne CBD, you will encounter a sprawling expanse of low-density, single-story suburban houses before you reach the countryside. This is a common sight across the city of Wyndham, a city council sitting on the western edge of Melbourne. 1 in every 2 people in Wyndham are born overseas, many of them coming from South Asian countries like India. These people came from cities that have very different urban landscapes compared to Wyndham. Do immigrants living in Wyndham think that those places are more walkable? After all, the physical features of an urban landscape like density, mix, and access are often cited as contributors to walkability. And so, my thesis compares immigrants' perception of walkability in Melbourne's outer suburbs and in places that they used to live in. This is achieved by conducting surveys and interviews with 12 immigrants who moved to Wyndham from 8 different countries. I also mapped the urban landscapes of the former and current neighborhoods of residents to understand what their walking environment is like. Let's compare the physical differences between Vadodara, a city in India, and the Wyndham suburb of Truganina. Buildings in Vadodara have multiple floors and are a lot closer to each other. There are both shops and homes in the same place, and the streets there are a lot less wide. These differences in density, mix, and access were observed between Wyndham and almost all the places that participants came from. So in theory, places overseas should be more walkable. Many participants highlight liveliness as a contributor to walkability in places overseas. This makes sense because street life is linked to walkability. But paradoxically, some participants also say quietness is a contributor to walkability in Wyndham. So participants see both quietness and liveliness as contributors to walkability. So why is this? After moving to Melbourne, many participants indicated that they do more recreational walking in Wyndham than abroad. They also walk less for utilitarian purposes like shopping here. This reflects how their evaluation of walkability is done through their experiences of walking recreationally. Indeed, the abundance of open space does create a peaceful environment that's suitable for walking in Wyndham. But underlying that fact is how the outer suburban landscape doesn't afford other types of walking and instead foster a car-dependent lifestyle. In summary, a shift towards recreational walking when participants move here means that they evaluate walkability differently in Wyndham than abroad. Unfortunately, my research is limited by a small sample size due to an unusually low response rate, so my findings cannot be generalized. But they show how the difference between recreational and non-recreational walking should be focused upon in future research about this topic.
Corroit Creek has become incredibly valuable to my life. I love this creek very much. It has become such a good teacher and a friend, and I don't feel sad or alone when I'm here. My research investigated how place attachments like these are developed through and motivate environmental stewardship action, which are actions to care for, protect, sustainably use and restore the natural environment. As climate change impacts compound the challenges already experienced by distressed urban ecosystems, community-led stewardship offers tools to embed sustainability at the local scale, build community capacity, and provide sustained, cost-effective care to the places which are vital for human and non-human inhabitants to survive and thrive. To better understand how natural spaces become important places for people and how this inspires stewardship action, I sought to answer the question, what role does place attachment play in motivating stewardship of an urban waterway? To do this, I interviewed and participated with members of a community-led environmental stewardship organisation, Friends of Corroit Creek, which steward a 6-kilometre stretch of Corroit Creek in Melbourne's western suburbs. My research uncovered a multi-dimensional process of feedback loops in which place attachments were developed through stewardship and then motivated and reinforced further stewardship actions. These place attachments formed in response to the natural environment stewards restored, the outcomes they achieved, and the social environment in which they participated. For stewards, Corroit Creek became a place which was imbued with memories, meanings, and feelings which participants developed through and associated with their stewardship action, and which attached them to the creek, the local community, and each other. In particular, the outcomes of their work, such as improvements to the health of the creek and the wildlife it supported, the acquisition of new skills, knowledge and friendships, and praise and appreciation from the broader community, became key ingredients of this place attachment and motivated them to continue and expand their stewardship action. Improving the understanding of the relationships between place attachment and stewardship motivations provides policymakers and placemakers with insights into how people use and value natural places. Put simply, how green spaces become important places. It also contributes to the evidence base drawn upon by community planners and organisations seeking to motivate people to volunteer their knowledge, time and energy to participate in collective action. My research found that supporting existing stewardship action is best achieved by leveraging the place attachments stewards develop and providing them with the power and resources to lead stewardship and placemaking initiatives around these places. In addition to environmental benefits, my research suggests that such approaches also generate significant social benefits for participants as well as the broader community.
Can build-to-rent deliver affordable rental in metropolitan Melbourne? Hello, I'm Sarah, and I've been renting my whole adult life. Like many of you, I feel the pressure of the rising rental price. This is why when I heard that build-to-rent can be a solution to our housing crisis, I knew that I had to know. Is it true? So build-to-rent generally refers to apartment buildings that are financed and owned by institutional investors such as super funds, and they are purposely built for rental. And my research used a causal loop diagram approach to investigate the causes and effects associated with build-to-rent development in metropolitan Melbourne. And today, I would like to share with you 3 findings. Finding number 1. Build-to-rent itself is not affordable housing. Build-to-rent apartments are typically located in inner city areas, and they come with very high-end amenities such as pools and gyms, and they are typically priced at 30% above market average, and that is not affordable to most people at all. Finding number 2. Build-to-rent, however, does have the potential to be part of the housing solution. This is because institutional investors have the capacity to deliver capital and efficiency required to deliver housing at scale. And they're incentivized to do so because build-to-rent can in turn give them very long-term stable rental revenue. So potentially speaking, build-to-rent can actually deliver a win-win-win situation for governments, private sector, and renters. So why isn't this happening? That brings us to my finding number 3. The biggest barrier isn't just monetary cost. It is also the cost of planning. Our Victorian planning system has no clear land use definition for build-to-rent, and it also has very complex planning process and discretionary assessment criteria. All of this can lead to planning uncertainty, cause construction delays, and further increase the cost of housing delivery. So in summary, my research has identified the list of leverage points and created a model where policymakers and data scientists can use to test different solutions so that we can better harness build-to-rent's potential to deliver affordable rental to all of us living in this beautiful city. Thank you for listening.
To many cultures within the Pacific, land is mother because of how land supports life. Women cannot own land in Tonga. All land in Tonga is limited to a life interest in a land title, which is favourably inherited through the male line. Women as daughters may inherit land only if there are no brothers, and widows can have a life interest in their deceased husband's estate so long as they remain celibate. Women may lease land, but the sale of land is prohibited. These strict rules of inheritance, put in place by the Tongan Constitution of 1875, introduced a unique pluralistic land practice that has seen Tongan custom and values of kinship grapple with legal statutes that have seen minimal change since their introduction. My study reviewed and analysed Tongan land court decisions over the last decade to investigate the interplay between gender, customary practice, and statutory law in shaping women's access to land, and which strategies, legal, social, or kinship-based, women employ in land disputes, and how factors such as rank or marital status affect their success. My findings revealed an uneven landscape of power. Men with prestige or resources tended to dominate legal battles, while women's success often depended on their status as widows with registered land, or immigrants with implied means also tended to fare well. Sisters and paternal aunts hold a very high social rank in Tongan culture, so much so that they can even arrange and veto marriages for their brothers. Yet several key cases appeared where a claim was raised against paternal aunts or the sister's side of the family, showing a precariousness of this social rank. My results revealed that women are battling with where to assert their influence. In one case, a sister denounced the court as the arena in which to settle land disputes. She said, and I quote, that as Tongans, they should have just talked about it and settled it. But the courtroom consistently upheld male primacy in its statutes and rulings, and will continue to do so long as the law doesn't change. This tension is at the heart of women's struggles, that their avenue to assert power and find success may not be within formal legal spaces, but instead within the dialogue between kin. For policymakers, the lesson is that land equity isn't necessarily about changing laws or overriding tradition. It's also about recognising where women already exercise power and ensuring those spaces aren't erased.
She stood there at the curb with the shopping trolley, looking both ways. Minutes passed, the traffic didn't. Eventually, she turned back, not because she didn't want to cross, but because she couldn't. And that's when I realized it's not just the cars that are moving fast, it's a system that's leaving people behind. That's a story from Greater Shepparton, and sadly, it's not unique. Older adults are some of our most experienced pedestrians, but also our most vulnerable. Hello, I'm Sucharita and I'm researching how pedestrian safety policies are failing older adults in regional cities and what we can do about it. Greater Shepparton in Northern Victoria is one of the Australia's fastest growing regional centres. It is also aging. 1 in 4 residents is now over 60, yet our road systems haven't caught up. My research asks, what gaps in pedestrian safety policy are putting elderly lives at risk on regional roads like those in Shepparton? To answer this, I used policy analysis of 14 local and state documents to check if older pedestrians are even mentioned, and if so, how, and site observation of 3 major roads assessing crossings, ramps, footpaths, lighting, and more. What I found was clear. Even though policies say they care about safety and inclusion, implementation tells another story. Pedestrian crossings are too far apart or missing entirely. Signal timings don't allow for slow walkers. Speed limits remain dangerously high. And here's a catch. These aren't just design flaws. These are policy failures. Documents like Greater Shepparton's Positive Aging Strategy promise safe and walkable environments. But those promises vanish on ground. This matters not just for safety but for equity too. Walking isn't just a transport. For older people, it's independence, it's health, it's connection. When infrastructure excludes them, we are saying this city is not for you. My research says we can do better. We need safer speeds, more frequent, accessible crossings, design standards that actually match human aging. Because when infrastructure responds to the needs of the most vulnerable, it works better for all of us. Because roads should connect us, not divide us. And no one should risk their life just to cross a street. Thank you.
Before I introduce myself, let me paint you a picture. You walk into a backyard, and there, where there used to be an empty, unused space, now stands a beautifully designed, eco-friendly, and self-contained home. It's not a shed, it's not a tent, but it's a real, livable home. It's not a fantasy, it's a solution. You may know these homes by the terms dependent persons unit, granny flats, or in current term known as small second dwellings. Hi, my name is Visma Patel, and my research explores how small second dwellings can be unexpected heroes in solving Victoria's deepening housing crisis. Here's the situation. Only 13% of the homes in Victoria are affordable to an average household. Rents are skyrocketing. Students, immigrants, and even elderly, they are all being pushed out of housing system. But there's a good news. We don't need to have more high-rise towers. We just need to use our land better. So I asked, can we develop small second dwellings using pre-modular architectures that can be both sustainable and compliant with Victorian planning scheme? Through interviews, case studies, and environmental assessments, I examined both pre-modular architecture and factory-built homes that can be assembled on site to see if they can make such homes truly sustainable. Here's what I found. Developing these units can take up to cut carbon emissions up to 40%. They take 50% less construction time. They also achieve up to 7-star energy rating. Not only that, it also complies with Amendment VC 253 that states that we don't need to have planning permits for lots larger than 300 square meters to build a granny flat less than 60 square meters. The model Venus Bay and Angel Sea from my case studies offer sleek, modern, and energy-efficient units, ready to house students, immigrants, and grandparents. Not only that, it also serves an integral part of creating rental incomes for the families who are struggling with mortgage payments. But it gets better. These aren't just structures, they are social lifelines, which allows multi-generational families to stay together and create affordable options in high-demand suburbs. At the same time, they align with sustainability goals set by the state without compromising any comfort. So why does it matter? It matters because Victoria is short over 100,000 homes, because climate change demands greener, smarter buildings, and because sometimes significant problems can be solved by small homes. In conclusion, pre-modular small second dwellings aren't just viable, but vital, as they offer an elegant integration of policy, sustainability, and compassion. They are no longer a fringe concept. So let's not see these homes and backyard extras. Let's start seeing them as the future of housing. Thank you.
We often think of airports as front doors to a city, but today airports are evolving into much more than that. They're becoming multifunctional urban centres drawing in large volumes of people, goods and traffic. And yet, despite this rising importance in the urban landscape, airports are still largely overlooked in urban planning conversations. One critical component that we should consider in airports is landside access, and that's the way people get to and from the airport. My thesis, titled The Airport and Public Transportation, Problems and Priority Setting, explores this interface between the airport and the city through the provision of public transport. In Melbourne, the dominant debate is about the absence of a rail link to the airport, and we're one of the handful of major cities without one, and this has led to criticism that Melbourne is somehow lacking a world-class transport system. But in my opinion, that judgment seems to overlook the fact that Melbourne operates a state-of-the-art Skybus service with 109 trips daily to and from airport to the city. So I set about the task to ask, what are the substantive problems in landside access and what's preventing us from solving them? And how does the rail link proposal fit into this story? Through interviews with transport planners and airport operators, three main issues emerged. Firstly, the congestion, essentially the inability for the roads to respond to the projected increases in passenger and freight traffic. Secondly is about job accessibility. Public transport often doesn't align with the way that airport workers work during the day. And thirdly are the complexities with the airport governance itself. Since privatisation in 1996, control over the airport has been fragmented across private operators, the federal government, state government, and to a small extent local government. There isn't a huge scope for change within this fragmented landscape because the airport earns a considerable amount of revenue from parking. Similarly, Skybus holds exclusive rights to operate a transport corridor, and the toll operator itself has to be compensated in the instance that its revenues are reduced from new public transport. So the next question is, what's the real purpose of the airport rail link? I engaged with an idea called aero-regionalism to conclude that it's as much about branding as it is about solving practical transport problems. And we've seen similar stories emerge in relation to the 2000 Olympics where the Sydney Airport rail link was opened. Transportation experts warned me that the benefits are likely to be overstated, and this is chronic amongst regions. In the literature, this is known as strategic misinterpretation. At the same time, there's also more flexible and cost-effective alternatives like shuttle buses, which I think are overlooked, but these options are often suffering from a poor public image and don't really fit into the world-class narrative that decision makers are trying to project. So where is this thesis going? This thesis aims to bring nuance to a highly politicised debate where public transport is subordinate to the reputation of the city. And the biggest finding overall is that the role of the airport in city branding is not well recognised in academia, but features very prominently in business circles, and that seems to be driving the public discourse. And if we're going to spend $13 billion as the projects estimate now, we must make sure that we're solving the right problems and not dismissing better alternatives because we have bias. And future research in this area could explore what high-quality shuttle networks might be like, because sometimes the best solutions are the ones that simply work. Thank you.